have at least a couple of more minutes. Maybe we can wait for 1 more minute before starting the speech. No. هنوز چند دقیقه وقت داریم. نه. بسم الله الرحمن الرحیم. Assalamu alaikum. So may Allah accept all your amal and fasting and prayers during the past 10 nights, right? Almost 1/3 of Ramadan is gone, and I guess you have enough energy to continue for 20 more days, right? We have two more 10 days still with us, in front of us. Inshallah, may Allah give us strength and tawfiq to finish this Ramadan. Allahi Ameen. So inshallah, we're gonna continue our program for tonight as usual, like the nights before, with the speech, with the English speech by our dear Maulana Sayyid Hussein Razavi. Please note, at the time of speech, we're gonna have kids program for ages 5 to 12 years old. It's gonna be in Farsi hall, and for babysitting, ages 2 to 5 years old, is gonna be down the hall on the Rise Academy side in the pre-K room. So please, brothers and sisters, we really request that please guide your kids and have your kids in one of these two rooms. And sisters, can we continue? Thank you. So inshallah, please ask your kids in one of these two rooms, so we can actually have the hall quiet for the people to benefit from the speech. Inshallah, tonight we're going to have also a short marthiyah for the wafat of Lady Khadija Salamullah alayha after the speech, before actually going to prayers. With that said, we're going to invite Maulana Sayyid Hussein Razavi to come to the podium and deliver the speech with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
صلوات على محمد وآل محمد ما صل على محمد وآل محمد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على وعلى أهل بيت الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد ولعنة الله على أعدائهم من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم حسبنا الله نعم الوكيل نعم المولى ونعم النصير صلوا على محمد وآل محمد صل على محمد وآل محمد. Our discussion the previous nights has been about how we can raise a family that has taqwa, how we can have a spouse, a partner, children who have taqwa and are muttaqeen. We talked about, especially when it comes to children, that there are 4 very important aspects that we need to focus upon. And although these 4 aspects aren't particularly restricted to children, we as adults also have to develop in these 4 aspects. We have to, especially when it comes to children, we have to be more ensuring that they're growing in these 4 fields. One is the intellectual aspect, that a child grows up and his mind grows, his mental aptitude also grows. The second aspect that we spoke about was about a child's moral and his akhlaqiyat. We have to teach children what are those things that we should do and that we shouldn't do, what are the things that we should avoid, what are the things that we should refrain from, what are the things that are harmful for us. The third aspect is that when it comes to children, that we should encourage them to pursue their hobbies, pursue whatever recreational activities they have. If they enjoy doing a certain activity, we should promote that. In the hadith it says that if a person has a certain time and allocated a certain time for these activities where they enjoy, it gives them energy in the other parts of their life. Otherwise they become dull, they become stagnant in their lives. And the fourth aspect, which we said that we as parents, we need to focus upon when it comes to children, is when it comes to that aspect and that dimension of making our children more God conscious, having more taqwa, talking to them about religion, talking to them about God, talking to them especially about when bad things happen in their lives. This is actually a very important thing, that before they go through a hard time in their life, is that we talk to them and we explain to them how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created this life in a manner which we are tested. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tests our iman to see how strong our faith is. If children are not taught these things, then when trial and tribulation comes, then they begin to waver. A few years ago there was this incident where two brothers who were part of the community, and the community in New Jersey where I am in, and these two brothers were very talented. They were artists and very athletic and quite active in the community, in the Sunday school, in the different programs. And the family had taken them to Pakistan, and when they had gone to Pakistan, they had spent a couple of days in Pakistan, and it was during the summer holidays. And one of the neighbors, because of the generator which they use, it emitted the carbon monoxide, and it went into the neighbor's home, which was the bedroom that they were sleeping in. And so these two young boys, they ended up passing away. And it was a shock for the community. It was a big tragedy because it was a small community. But the repercussions which happened afterwards were even more devastating, because the other kids in the community, because they weren't taught about what is Islam's teachings when it comes to trials and tribulations and how to handle hardships, then what that resulted in was that years later these children, they've lost their faith and they've lost their belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So before tragedy hits, before hardships hit, we have to talk to them about what does Islam expect from us when times of difficulty come. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. There's a hadith from Imam al-Sadiq where he says, Al-alim bi zamanihi la tahjumu alayhi al-lawabis. The translation of the hadith is that a person who recognizes the time and the circumstances which he lives in, which he resides in, he understands the circumstances and the situation that he's in, la tahjum alayhi al-lawabis. Then such a person will not be ambushed by the fluctuations of time, will not be ambushed by the changes in times. What this hadith is pointing us towards is that we as parents, one of the things we have to realize is that our children are growing up in a different society. They're growing in a different time, they're growing up in a different age. The way we grew up, it was very different, whether it was in India, Pakistan, or Iran, or these Arab countries, wherever it may be. The circumstances were different there, and the circumstances are different now. We cannot use the same methods of parenting that we used over there. Perhaps those were effective, but those may not be effective right now. Children in this generation are very different from the previous generations. The way that they think, the way that they behave, the way that they talk. Because of the number of exposures that they get from a young age, they tend to grow up and they tend to mature a lot more quickly. Even physically speaking, children, they tend to mature more quickly because of the sheer number of things that they get exposed to, whether it's in the food, whether it's hormones or other additives which are put in the food. But children, they grow up more. That's why we find children nowadays, they tend to be more hyper, they tend to be more active than in previous times. We also have to realize that one of the things that children have is that children they act on impulse. They don't have an ability to control themselves. And this is something which isn't developed. And something we as parents, we have to teach them. We talked about how because of the social media age, young children, when they grow up, they're used to that immediate and that instant gratification. But one of the things that falls under that moral growth that we need to develop in our children is the aspect where we teach our children how to be patient, how to persevere, not to expect that we get everything instantly. And so we have to teach these type of things. These are important. and these akhlaqiyat are the things that will impact them the most. So for example, as an example, if a child is eating food, we should teach the child that take the amount of food that you're going to eat. Don't put extra food in your plate and then let it go to israf, throw it out. That's something which we as parents, we have to teach. Because children, why are they putting more food on their plate? Because, adults do it too as well. They say the eyes are bigger than the stomach. But especially when it comes to children, because they're acting on impulse. And so they're not making an active decision in what they're doing, is whether it's good or not. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Salli ala Muhammad wa ali. And because this age of parenting is so different than the previous ages, it becomes important for us as parents that we have to study and that we have to read psychology. We have to come up with different techniques in how to raise our kids. One of the things that we as parents, we also have to do is we have to realize that within all children, there's a sense of belongingness which needs to be fulfilled. Children, psychologically speaking, they have this sense of belonging which needs to be fulfilled within them. And this sense of belonging is that every person, they have this need that they want to be accepted, they want to be part of a social class, they want to be part of a group. In Arabic, they call it al-intama, a sense of belonging, being a member of an extended group or an organization. That's why we find in high school and we find in colleges, there's so many different clubs. There's a debate team, there's the arts team, there's the animals and paws and all these different humanitarian clubs. All of these things are there. Why? And they attract people because that sense of being fulfilled, that sense of belonging is being fulfilled through these organizations. And so we as parents have to understand that children have this sense of belonging and how we can fulfill that. When children feel fulfilled, when children feel as if they belong somewhere, what happens is that they begin to feel validated. They feel as if they're part of something. If a child doesn't feel as if he's part of something greater, then the child inside feels hollow. He feels detached. He doesn't feel as if he's part of something. And so sometimes parents have asked me many times that, can you go and talk to our children and tell them to become more religious and stop making friends with such people? So when I go and I talk to these kids, one of the things that a lot of these kids that they say is that, my friends, they accept me. My friends, they like me for who I am. My friends enjoy me. My friends want to be with me. So what's happening? What is that pointing towards? That's pointing towards that sense of belonging is being fulfilled by their friends. Their friends are accepting them. So they go and they spend time with those friends rather than their family. When their family did that sense of belonging isn't being fulfilled. So they go to friends, whether those friends are good or whether those friends are bad. They go outside and they go spend time with them, and sometimes those friends are very bad influences upon them. They start adapting their habits, they start copying their behavior, they're copying their dress, the way that they speak. And so it's important for us as parents to realize that if that sense of belonging is not fulfilled at home, then the child will go elsewhere to feel fulfilled. And if a child goes outside of the home to feel fulfilled, well, we see what type of society that there is. They're going to go, and that sense of belonging is going to be fulfilled by things which are not accepted by Islam. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So when I mentioned this point that you have to create an environment to parents that the children are being fulfilled, it's sometimes very difficult for parents to understand that why doesn't our child feel as if he or she belongs to their home. And it's difficult because parents, they sacrifice so much for their kids. They sacrifice their time, they sacrifice their money. Many of them have moved from one place to another place just for the sake of the children's school. And so parents, for them it's very difficult to comprehend that why doesn't my child feel as if this is their home? Why do they feel like an outsider? They say we sacrifice so many things. And there's a couple of reasons perhaps why this may be the case. And this goes back to the discussion that we were talking about, that how important it is in terms of how we use our tongues. Especially when we get angry, especially when we get enraged, what do we say with our tongues? It's possible that one time we said something to our child, and that child, since that day, he's lost that sense of belongingness in his home. We may have said something, you're a waste of time, you're no good, you're a loser. We may say these type of things out of anger, and what happens is that those words, they go into the child's heart, and the child reverberates. And these words, they echo in their minds that my mother or my father, they think I'm no good. They think I'm a waste. They think I can't accomplish anything. And so these words are constantly being repeated in their mind. So they're thinking that my parents believe me, that I'm no good, that I'm a waste of time. And so when parents, when they behave like this, when they say some of these things are being put in their mind. And sometimes it's lasting for a very long time. So it becomes of utmost important that when we do become angry, when we do say something to our kids, that we don't say these type of cruel and wicked things, that perhaps the repercussions may go for a lot longer. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Muhammad wa ali. Some of the other things which may cause the child to lose that sense of belongingness within the home, and it's constant reprimanding. All parents want the best for their children. All parents want to see their children to be moral, to be ethical, to be successful, to be intelligent, to be hardworking. But sometimes the method which they use may not be the best way. One of the things that parents do is that they constantly reprimand, they constantly scold, they constantly bring out the flaws of the child. And so what happens is the child thinks that my parents, the only thing that they see from me is that they only see the negative aspects of me. They only see my flaws, they only see my uyub, they only see my negative side. And so that's what they associate their parents with, that the negative side that they have. So sometimes, I've seen this as well. I'm sure many of you have seen this, where parents, the way that they talk to their children is is as if it's a cross-examination. Where are you? Why didn't you come home? Why is it so late? Why didn't you send a text message? You should have been here. And they use this type of language where the parents are constantly reprimanding their children, and that's a sign of improper tarbiyat. I was somewhere at someone's home, and the person's child came, and the child was actually quite old. It was like 45 years old, 45 years of age. And the father turns to his child, this grown man, and he says, "Did you read your prayer yet?" And this is a man, he's probably in his 70s, he's asking his 45-year-old, "Did you pray yet?" That's a sign that something went wrong in tarbiyat, that one aspect of raising a child didn't go properly. And so when a child is constantly being questioned, when a child is constantly being criticized and interrogated, what happens is that the self-esteem of a child becomes completely destroyed. And the child doesn't feel welcome. The child doesn't feel as if this home belongs to me. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Muhammad. There's a hadith from the Imam which echoes this point. The Imam, it's narrated from our first Imam, where he says, "Al-ifrat fil mulama yashubbu niranul lajaj." That excessive fil malama, excessively reprimanding your children, what it results in is that it inflames within the child stubbornness. It makes the child become arrogant. It makes the child not wanting to listen to the parents. Although the parents are thinking that when we criticize our children, we're doing it for a good reason. We want those bad habits to be removed. But excessive reprimanding has a counter effect, has a negative effect. What we want the child to do, the child won't do it. Because the child is under this pressure that my parents aren't accepting me for who I am, and only the negative aspects are coming about. There's another hadith from the Imam where he says, "Iyaka an tukarrir al-atab." Stay away and refrain from finding faults in your children and repeating them over and over again. Because what will happen, the Imam says, فَإِنَّ ذَلِكَ, because your excessive reprimanding of your kids and bringing their flaws out, what does it result in? يُغَرِّ بِالذَّنْبِ. It causes them to go towards sinning. It causes them to go towards that thing which you don't want them to go towards. And then the second effect of excessive reprimanding is وَيُحَوِّنُ الْعَتَبِ. What happens is, if a person constantly scolds and reprimands their children, يُحَوِّن, it makes that scolding, it makes it ineffective. When a parent, when it comes to the smallest thing, is picking out their flaws. When the smallest issues come up, they're chastising their children, right? The child is constantly feel as if he or she is under attack. And then when something big comes up, when they do something really bad, then they're also being criticized. Then when you criticize the child for something big, it doesn't have the effectiveness anymore. And so as an example, like if a child leaves a toy or leaves his toys on the ground, this is not, and you constantly repeat to the child, pick up your toys, pick up your toys. In this case, a child shouldn't be reprimanded. A child shouldn't be punished. Instead, what we should tell the child is that pick up your toys, because if you don't pick up your toys, the house is going to be a mess. If you pick up your toys, if you don't pick up your toys and leave them on the ground, then you're going to step on it. You're going to get hurt. You're going to fall down, or your brother or your sister or your mom and dad are going to come and they're going to step on it and they're going to get hurt. So instead of reprimanding them, just constantly giving these types of advices. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Ya ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. See, reprimanding is one thing and reminding is another thing. Punishing is one thing, and recalling and asking them to do certain thing is a different thing. When we punish, it affects the child's psychology. But when we remind the children, do this, make your bed, take the garbage out, clean up, as long as we remind, these type of things happen. Because we should only reprimand when it comes in a situation that it requires, where it requires a child to be reprimanded. We talked about how tarbiyat goes along with ta'aleem. That tarbiyat and ta'aleem, these two things, they work in synergy with one another. If you want to do proper tarbiyat, you have to do ta'aleem. How does ta'aleem happen? Ta'aleem happens through repetition. Whenever we want to learn something, for example, we want to learn the Quran. If we want to learn a chapter of the Quran, what do we have to do? We have to constantly repeat it. That's how ta'aleem happens, through repetition. Ta'aleem doesn't happen that you just do it once and that's it. You don't gain any expertise if you just do it once. It only happens through repetition. So a lot of times parents, they come up to me and they say, why do we always have to tell our children to do this over and over and over? Well, you have to do that because that's part of ta'aleem. Repetition is part of ta'aleem. Just like in salat, why do we pray over and over again? Why do we keep on saying the same prayer over and over again? Because this is ta'aleem. Why do we do tasbih Fatima al-Zahra salamullahi alayha? Why do we say 34 times Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar? Constantly to remind ourselves that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's the greatest power, that there is nobody who's superior to Him, that there is no force, that there is no strength other than Allah. Then we say Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah. Why are we repeating this over and over again? Because we want to remind ourselves, Alhamd, that all that which is good, it comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَإِن مِّن شَيْءٍ إِلَّا إِنْدَنَا خَزَائِنُهُ. That there is not a single thing which is good that you have, except Allah has the storage of it. Allah has it amassed. Allah has the source of it. And that He only descends it in a very small amount. A lot of times the way that we think is, when we have something good, it's because of our own hard work. It's because of our effort that we did. It's because of our intelligence we've done that, right? So when we repeat Alhamdulillah, it means that no, whatever good that we have in our lives, Alhamdulillah, it belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It doesn't happen to us. And then in Tasbih Fatima al-Zahra, we say, Subhanallah, Subhanallah, Subhanallah. What does that mean? That means Allah is free from all imperfections. That Allah has no flaws. Allah has no aib. Most of the times we do this the other way. When something bad happens, we say it's because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent this adab in our life. And if something good happens, they say, we did this. So even this repetition, what is it doing? If we reflect over it and we introspect on it, it's teaching us some of the most important teachings of Tawheed. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Muhammad wa ali. So it's important when it comes to parenting that we have a moderate approach, that we don't excessively reprimand our children, but we also don't go to the opposite side where we let the child do whatever they want. That we're completely passive. That let the child do whatever they want and we don't even open our mouth. There's a hadith from Imam al-Baqir where he says, Sharrul Aba, that the worst of fathers and the worst of parents, Man da'ahu al-bir ila al-ifrat. Those parents who are so excessive in their kindness. Those parents who are excessive in their affection to their children, that whatever the children want, they do it. That there is no discipline, there's no tarbiyat, there's no ta'aleem. They give their children a free pass and let them do whatever they want. And whenever they do something, they justify it. If they break something, they say it's not a big deal. If they say something inappropriate, they say, they learned this from school. They justify it. Instead of the proper way of doing tarbiyat is through ta'aleem and correcting what they said, they justify it. And so the child, what happens? The child thinks that, I can do whatever I want. And a few years later, we see how spoiled the child gets. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. another thing that we as parents have to realize, that children who are growing up in this age, is that we as parents, we want our children to be very high achieving. The way that our society is working now is very different than how it was 15, 20 years ago. Children these days, they have a lot more difficult time than as compared to previous times. And perhaps the main reason is because the sheer number of distractions that they have. They have so many factors going on. For them to process all of these things, it becomes very difficult. Children who are growing up in school, they have peer pressure. In school, they have this fashion trends. There's all of these things going on. And on top of that, there's schoolwork, there's SATs, there's APs, there's this exam, there's this essay. All of these things, it becomes very difficult, especially when it comes to peer pressure. There was a man who was 105 years old, and so somebody, they asked him that, what is the best thing about being 105 years old? And he said the best thing is that there's no peer pressure, that I can do whatever I want. Nobody judges me. No one says anything to me. I'm completely by myself. Right? But children, one of the challenges that they have is that they're under peer pressure. Their friends are pulling them towards something. So as parents, understanding that, that they're going through a difficult time. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And times are only going to get more challenging. Maybe us as parents right now think we have a difficult time, but when our children grow up and when they have their own children, they're going to be having a much more difficult time. Another important thing is that one of the most important times to teach our kids is in a time of difficulty, in a time of hardships. If, for example, if there was a loss of life, or if a tragedy struck a family, it's important that these are actually some of the most effective moments for how we can teach our children about religion and about Allah and about Islam. We shouldn't, a lot of times when something unfortunate happens, when a misfortune or calamity falls upon us, one of the things that we do is we become very hopeless. We become very desperate. We act as if it's the end of the world. Sometimes we get emotional. We may say some things that are inappropriate. And we have to remind ourselves that this is actually going to affect the children in a negative way. They're going to see how we react, and that's how they're going to react. Whereas if we react in a positive manner, if tragedy strikes us, if a hardship comes upon us, if a calamity befalls us, what we should do is that we should go to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We should talk to Allah. We should read the Quran. We should do dua. We should do munajat. We should show our children that when hardship comes, that the source of security in our life is turning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they should see that when our parents are in a difficult time, they go to the Quran, they go to the Ahlul Bayt. Automatically what will happen is that there will be an affinity towards the Quran, towards the Ahlul Bayt. Whereas if we're in a time of difficulty and we just break down, then the children will also become hopeless. If the children see that in a time of difficulty that the parents are going to read the Quran and do some other munajat, and they see that has an effect upon them, then automatically they're going to go towards that. And when they see that the effect of Allah is like this in their lives, never will they think that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't have a role. They will never go towards atheism. They will never go towards these ideas or these notions that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't exist. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Muhammad wa ali. So how do we discipline children? Because this is a very difficult topic, and it's something which all parents have a very difficult time grappling with. Is that how do we do the discipline in our children? So perhaps it's a better question to answer is how we don't do the discipline of our children. The first way that we shouldn't do discipline for our children is a hadith which I quoted yesterday from Imam, where he says, La adab ma ghadab, that when you're in a state of anger, don't discipline your children. That's not a time for disciplining your children. There's a hadith from the Prophet that where he said, Naha Rasulullah anil adab indal ghadab, that the Prophet prohibited disciplining at the time of anger. Because what happens is when a person goes in a state of anger, he doesn't think rationally. He doesn't think logically. He says things which are inappropriate. If a parent becomes angry, he says, you're never stepping out of the house. That's irrational. That's not something logical which the parent is saying. Instead, what happens is that if a parent in a state of anger disciplines the child, then the child will lose that authority for the parent. They think that our parents are just, they're exaggerating. They're not taking things seriously. So over time, if in a time of anger we react and we punish, then overall the effectiveness of our parenting and discipline, it goes away. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Li'ana Muhammad wa ali. So the second way to not discipline your children is that we should never shame our children. We should never make our children lose their self-worth and their dignity. We should never point out their flaws and make them feel as if they're unaccepted. Make them feel in their thought that there's something not good. This is why, like, even some parenting strategies are that if a child does something bad, you don't say to the child, "You're bad." You say what you did is bad. So you separate between the child's personality and the action. So the child doesn't attribute being bad to himself. But whenever we discipline, we should never try to make the child feel ashamed. We should never humiliate the child. This is why hurmatul mu'min akbar a'zam min al-Kaaba, that the sanctity of a mu'min, of a believer, is greater than the Kaaba. That's why for this same reason, it's prohibited to backbite or to mention the flaws of other people. Can I please ask the sisters to quiet down? If you want to talk, please step outside. And if you want to stay here, please listen to the lecture. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Salli ala Muhammad wa ali. And so the third way not to discipline your children is that you're not supposed to hit your children. The way that a lot of times parents, they think that, by using physical force is an effective way of disciplining. And it's not. That's not the way that the ai raise their children. We have hadith which say, "La tadribu awladakum," that do not hit your children. Because what happens is that if we do use physical force with our children, is that the children, they begin to fear us. The children, if we use physical force, they begin to fear the pain which we're going to exert upon them. And this isn't how proper tarbiyat is done. We shouldn't, as parents, we shouldn't make the child fear us. Rather, we should make the child fear the outcome of whatever they're doing, which isn't correct. And so Islam teaches us that there's a difference between fearing the outcome of the sin and fearing the one who's going to punish them. There's a difference between the two. There's a verse in the Quran that says, قُلْ إِنِّي أَخَافُ أَنْ عَصَيْتُ رَبِّي عَذَابَ يَوْمٍ أَذِيمٍ. It says that I fear if I disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, عَذَابَ يَوْمٍ أَذِيمٍ, that I fear the punishment of a great day. If we use physical force, if we hit our children, the child begins to fear us. And it won't change the child. What it'll do is that it'll make the child stay away from the parents. It'll make the child withdrawn from the parents. The child will be misleading. The child will be evasive. Why? Because he wants to avoid the parents' wrath. So then he's going to lie, he's going to make up things, he's not going to be honest. It'll make the child become indirect. It'll make the child not communicate with the parents. It'll make the child react in a manner where he doesn't want to talk with his parents. It'll make the child become emotional. The child no longer becomes transparent. He doesn't want to communicate with the parent. So it's important that we as parents, that we don't get the child to fear us, but to fear the outcome of whatever they're doing, and that making sure that they realize that what their action has negative consequences, and that is what you need to stay away from. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Because if they fear the parents, then when the parents aren't there, they're going to be doing those things. Whereas if they fear the consequences of that, whether the parents are there or not there, they're going to stay away from those type of things. So the presence of the parents won't matter if we can give them the proper tarbiyat to understand the effects of what they're doing. So how do we discipline our children? First thing is that the way that we talk, the tone that we have, that's very important. Sometimes the tone is more important than the words that we use. If we say it in a calm manner, in a composed manner, that's a lot of times much more effective, and that's sometimes more heard than the actual words which are being said. The hadith, when it talks about how to talk to your children, it says ar-rifq, that talk with kindness, talk with a tone which is respectful, not a tone which is aggressive or belligerent or condescending. That's not the tone to be speaking with children. The second strategy which I found in hadith in how we should discipline our children is that this is probably one of the most impactful ways if we use it effectively. And that is what we do is if a child does something which is really wrong, is that we use isolation. We get the child to be by himself. We separate the child from the rest of the family, or some type of silent treatment. And the reason why this is so effective, that isolating a child, sending a child in a timeout, or sending a child in his bedroom, is because when a child gets separated from his family members, what'll happen is that'll be a time where he starts thinking about what I did. It's important for us to get children to think about what they're doing and why those things that they're doing is bad, instead of us telling them that stay away from this because the parents said it. No, what we want to do is we said tarbiyah is what? Making the circumstances where a child can reach his potentials. So we want the child to be able to think and understand the consequences of his action and why those actions are wrong. So that's why this is very effective technique to discipline children, that separate the children for a little while and get them to think. Get them to think about the consequences of their action. In Dua Kumel, Imam Ali says, Ya ilahi wa sayyidi wa mawlaya wa rabbi, sabartu ala adhabik. Imam says that I can tolerate your punishment. فَكَيْفَ أَصْبِرُ عَلَى فِرَاقِكَ. But the thing which is the most intolerable for the Imam is that if I'm in the fire of hell, that I'm separated from you. That is the thing which is the most difficult for me, to know that I am distant from you. So when a child feels as if he's distant from his parents due to his actions, he'll think about his actions. And so it's important that we as parents, one of the things that we talked about this earlier, is that we shower so much kindness, so much affection on them, that one of the ways for them to understand what they're doing is wrong is just to deprive them of that kindness, to deprive them of that generosity. And by us not even doing anything, but just depriving that rahmah which we have upon them, they realize that we did something wrong. Why is it that we did this wrong? And what can we do that we don't repeat it? Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And the reason why this is important is because the child gets to understand and realize himself or herself why they did that action and why that action wasn't correct. If we always tell them, they're always going to be dependent upon us. But if we give them the principles to understand which things are right and which things are wrong, then we're giving them tools and techniques in their lives. So when the child is able to reach a conclusion on their own, this is that level of maturity which happens when we give proper tarbiyat. And so it becomes important that us as parents, that we create this type of environment where our children can thrive, where our children can mature, where our children get proper tarbiyat as well as where they get proper ta'reem. Because our children, this Imam says, awladuna akbaduna, that our children are our akbad, are very, very dear to us. Because it is on our children we depend, that after we die, that we expect them to send us gifts. We expect them to recite Fatiha for us. We expect them to recite Yasin. We expect them to give sadaqah on our behalf. We expect them to recite du'as on our behalf. So it becomes something extremely important that when we raise our children, we raise them in this type of manner. And so this is what we have in the Sirat of the Ahlul Bayt, that our Imams, our Prophets, that they did this. When we look at the life of the Prophet, we see that the Prophet, this is what he tried to do. That he tried to develop this type of environment with his wife, Lady Khadija, where it was filled with love and kindness and with affection. And we see that this is something which is reciprocal. When in the family environment, if one person is loving and caring, then automatically the other person becomes loving and caring. Lady Khadija is somebody who becomes a paragon, an icon of sacrifice. She becomes a role model for all the believers where they are, because she's somebody who embraced Islam but accepted Islam in such a manner where she sacrificed everything for the sake of Islam. She sacrificed everything for the sake of Prophet. This was the amount of love and affection that she had. And the Prophet, the year that she passed away, he called it Amul Huzn, the year of sorrow. Because that was so heavy on him that Lady Khadija left this world, because in that year he also lost Abu Talib, his supporter, and the one who basically gave him that support in that society of Makkah. And that 1 year which he lost both al-Mu'mineen Khadija as well as Abu Talib, he called it the year of sorrow because of that intense grief that he had. The Prophet was married to her for a period of 24 years, and she died on the 10th of Ramadan. The Prophet, after her death, for 1 year, he didn't marry any other person because of that level of respect and the love which he had for her. Lady Khadija had said that she had 80,000 camels which she used to rent out to different tribes and different people who were in Mecca. And the amount of money which she was getting was completely exorbitant. She was a very, very wealthy lady. But she gave all of that in the way of Islam. She sacrificed all of that in the way of Islam. Whatever she possessed, she said that it's for the Prophet. Whatever she had, she did it for the sake of helping other people. She sacrificed everything, including her reputation, for the sake of Islam. And this is what a house in which there is love, in which there is affection, a house where there is love and affection is a house with sacrifices. And this is what Lady Khadija represents. Sacrificing, making the ultimate sacrifice. If Lady Khadija, if she didn't sacrifice for these things, I'm sure she would have had a very good life and she would have lived for longer than she did. But the fact that she gave up everything for the Prophet used to reciprocate this by always remembering her. He always used to mention her. When he used to sit, he used to talk about Khadija. When he used to stand, he used to talk about Khadija. When he used to pray, he used to mention Khadija. So much so that one of the wives of the Prophet said that, why are you mentioning Khadija so much? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you a younger wife, a more beautiful wife, a better wife. When Rasulullah, when he heard this, he says, Wallah ma abdalani khayran minha. I swear to Allah that He has not given me better than her, because she is somebody, she believed in me when nobody else believed in me. She supported me when there was no support for me. She trusted me when nobody else trusted me. She believed in me, she believed in Islam when everybody else used to reject Islam. She used to pray with me when there was nobody else who used to pray. And the Prophet, he always used to keep that memory of Lady Khadija alive. One of the things that he used to do was that he used to go and he used to sacrifice an animal. He used to sacrifice a sheep, and he used to send it to some of her friends and her family and other people and ask them to pray for her, to remember her, to do dua for her. And Prophet, this was how much that intense love that he had for her. When Lady Khadija, when she fell ill, she calls the Prophet and she tells him that she has a last wasiyah to give. And she says, أَوَّلًا فَإِنِّي قَاصِرَةٌ فِي حَقِّكَ. She says, first thing, I have fallen short in my right towards you. فَأَعْفِنِي يَا Rasulullah. She asks Rasulullah to forgive her. Rasulullah, when he sees Lady Khadija talking like this, that this woman who's given the ultimate sacrifice and sacrificed everything, all of her possessions for him as well as for his religion, the Prophet, he says, Hasha wa kalla, that never, you didn't do anything wrong. Ma ra'aytu minki taqsira. I didn't see any form of shortcoming from you. I didn't see any flaw from you. Whatever you had, you gave for the sake of Islam. You sacrificed your entire life in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. She says her second wasiyah. She says, Ya Rasulullah, al-wasiyah al-thaniya. My second wasiyah, what is it? Usika bihadihi. وَأَشَارَتْ إِلَى Fatima. She points to Lady Fatima Zahra and she says, O Rasulullah, I entrust this young daughter to you. I entrust that you take care of her. She's a young girl. فَإِنَّهَا غَرِيبًا. She's going to be alone. I was a support for her. I was constantly helping her. But after I leave this world, I am no longer going to be there. فَلَا يُؤْذِيهَا أَحَدٌ مِّنَ النِّسَاءِ قُرَيْشٍ. Don't allow any of the women of Quraysh to come and torment her, to say things which are inappropriate. She says that don't allow anybody to come and slap her. Don't allow anybody to come hit her or assault her. And the third wasiyah, what she says that فَإِنِّي أَقُولَهَا لِإِبْنَتِي Fatima. My third wasiyah, I'm not going to say it to you, Rasulullah. وَهِيَ تَقُولُ لَكَ. And I will tell it to Lady Fatima, and Lady Fatima, she will tell it to you. فَإِنِّي مُسْتَحِيَّةٌ مِنْكَ. Because I am embarrassed to mention it to you. فَقَامَ النَّبِيُّ. So the Prophet stood up, وَخَرَجَ مِنَ الْحُجْرَةِ. And so the Prophet left. فَدَأَتْ بِفَاطِمَةٍ. So Lady Khadija calls Fatima and she says, وَقَالَتْ يَا حَبِيبَتِي وَقُرَّةَ عَيْنِي. O my beloved daughter, O the comfort of my eyes, قُولِي لِأَبِيكِ. Say to your father, إِنَّ أُمِّي تَقُولُ. That your mother is saying, أَنَا خَائِفَةٌ مِنَ الْقَبْرِ. That this grave which I am going towards, I am fearful of it. أُرِيدُ مِنْكَ رِدَاءَكَ الَّذِي تَلْبِسُهُ هِينَ نَزُولُ. Lady Khadija, she gave everything for the sake of Islam. She had no other possession in her life. She didn't even have a kafan. She says that when the Prophet, when he buries me, that I'm scared of the grave. That one thing I request from the Prophet is that cloak that he used to wear when the wahi used to come down, that he wraps me in that and he buries me into that. After her soul departs from this world, Jibreel descends and he comes to the Prophet and he says, Ya Muhammad, inna kafna Khadija huwa min akfan al-jannah. O Muhammad, O Prophet, know that the kafan and the cloak which Lady Khadija is going to be buried with is from among the cloaks of Jannah. Ahdallahu ilayha, that Allah Himself has given this kafan. And this was the death of Lady Khadija salamullahi alayha. Let us very briefly remember the death of one more woman. And this woman is the wife of Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, Fatima al-Zahra. Lady Fatima, her last wasiyat was that when she was going to be buried, when she was going to die, that nobody else should know that she is being buried. Nobody should know that her place of worship. So when she said this wasiyat to Imam Ali, after she departs this world, Imam Ali gathers the children and he tells the children that your mother has said that she doesn't want anybody to know about her death. She doesn't want anybody to know that where she is going to be buried. And so Imam tells the children that I know you're sad, I know you're upset, and I know that you miss your mother, but try not to cry loudly. Try not to raise your voices in weeping for your mother, because this is your mother's wish. Do not cry loudly so people know about this. And so the children of Zahra, instead of crying loudly, they're whimpering with low voices, they're remembering their mother. When the Imam, when he goes to give the ghusl to Lady Fatima, the Imam is giving ghusl, but at a certain point when the Imam is giving ghusl to Lady Fatima, the Imam could not tolerate the crying. Imam began crying loudly. The children of Zahra turned to their father and said, Father, you have told us not to cry loudly. Why is it that you are crying loudly? Imam, while he was giving, he put his hand on the rib of Fatima the Zahra and he realized that this Lady Fatima, she sacrificed so much that she didn't want her children to undergo torment. She didn't want her children to understand the pain that she was going, so she hid it and she concealed the amount of pain and torture that she was going through. سيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات تابع اللهم بيننا وبينهم بالخيرات إنك مجيب الدعوات إنك على كل شيء قدير.
Ya Hussein, Ya Abbas. There'll be a noha, please. Ya Hussein, Ya Abbas. Ya Hussein, Ya Abbas. Ya Hussein, Ya Abbas. Ya Hussein, Ya Abbas, Ya Ahmad ka hai ye naha wa hasrata Khadija. Ahmad ka hai ye naha Khadija. Ahmad ka hai ye noha wa hasrata Khadija. Main ho gaya hu tanha wa hasrata Khadija. Khadija حسرت خدیجہ احمد کا ہے یہ نوحہ حسرت خدیجہ احمد کا ہے یہ نوحہ حسرت خدیجہ امت کے واسطے میں ہوں رحمت الہی امت کے واسطے میں ہوں رحمت الہی رحمت کا تم بھی سایہ حسرت خدیجہ احمد کا ہے یہ نوحہ حسرت خدیجہ احمد کا ہے یہ نوحہ حسرت خدیجہ یہ پوچھتی ہے مجھ سے بابا کہاں ہے اماں یہ پوچھتی ہے مجھ سے بابا کہاں ہے اماں روتی ہے میری زہرا حسرت خدیجہ احمد کا ہے یہ نوحہ حسرت خدیجہ احمد کا ہے یہ نوحہ حسرت خدیجہ کیسے بتاؤں اس کو دنیا سے چل بسی تم کیسے بتاؤں اس کو دنیا سے چل بسی تم بن ماں کی ہے یہ دکھیا حسرت خدیجہ احمد کا ہے یہ نوحہ حسرت خدیجہ احمد کا ہے یہ نوحہ حسرت خدیجہ زہرا کو بعد میرے حق اپنا مانگنے پر زہرا کو بعد میرے حق اپنا مانگنے پر جھٹلائے گی یہ دنیا حسرت خدیجہ